Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I'm really excited to be here, since honestly, just several years ago, we couldn't imagine such a discussion here in Ukraine. And as today's event is hosted and initiated by the world-class metallurgy companies, this provides really a lot of optimism to reduce industrial footprint and to leave cleaner planet for our kids. So, today's event is hosting a number of reputable technology experts, which provides me an opportunity to focus exclusively on business and very practical aspects of decarbonization project planning and implementation. To briefly introduce our company, let me say that Bilfinger Group has been deeply involved in energy transition topics, in energy transition projects for many years. And the group of companies is operating under the so-called 2-4-6 concept, meaning that we've got two key service lines, being technologies and engineering and maintenance, operating in 4 regions globally, in continental and Northwest Europe, as well as in the North America and the Middle East. And we are serving the clients in 6 key industrial domains, including metals and mining sector. The core portfolio and strategic services of Bilfinger Group perfectly fit the needs of energy transition and decarbonization. And we are proud to say that we've got a wide portfolio of projects implemented for our clients in the domains of carbon capture, hydrogen, wind and solar, energy efficiency, and many others. Overall, our group of companies supports investment projects and business needs of our clients along the entire projects and assets life cycle, starting with the strategic input, with developing or verifying investment scenario, catching up with engineering, process engineering, project and construction management, and ending up with the assets commissioning or decommissioning if your business needs require that. But let me stop at this point and switch to the very key topic of our discussion, which is the way towards decarbonizing metals and mining sector, as well as practical aspects of project planning and implementation. Here on the screen, you can see the selection of 350 projects being at early stage and implemented right now in Europe, the Middle East, and the US. By the early stage and commercial projects, we mean the projects aimed at application of hydrogen and carbon capture technologies at industrial scale, with front-end engineering and design as the cutting point for the early development stage phase of the project. So here you can see that Europe is leading the energy transition, the decarbonization move, with roughly 50% of the projects being implemented in the northwest part of Europe. Those projects are more or less equally focused on application of hydrogen and carbon capture technologies. And looking specifically at metallurgy sector, we can see that roughly 14% of those early stage commercial projects are either initiated or implemented in partnership with metals and mining companies. You can, in regard to specific technology, hydrogen and carbon capture, you can see that a sizable part of the projects are focused on different applications of green hydrogen, which provides an opportunity to virtually fully decarbonize the industry. And at the same time, carbon capture, utilization and storage is an option today which allows CO2 reduction while running the business almost as is. And at the same time, this enables creation of new products for industrial sector and other industries. Under the pressure of multiple factors already discussed today, being the shifting consumer demand, tightening carbon emissions regulations, as well as shifting investor focus towards sustainable investments, the industry today finds itself in quite a difficult position, trying to find a balance between running conventional business and at the same time having a possibility for long-term activities. The immediate shift towards zero carbon steel production is next to impossible. So the most viable way is a multi-stage approach, a multi-stage transition from CO2 emissions reduction to full decarbonization. And when evaluating the strategies, the company needs to account a wide range of options and capabilities, among which the most important are site location and availability of infrastructure, including those for CO2 or hydrogen, transportation and storage, operating costs of scrap, for example, or electricity, and the overall commercial availability of renewables, such as wind, solar, biomass. Technology feasibility is still an issue, as still we see the limited capacity from suppliers ready to provide performance guarantee for their technology. And of course, regulatory environment and state support are among the key factors. Some of the possible steps, like, for example, efficiency programs for blast furnace are already available and are commercially and economically viable, but the others are still not economically viable. And the key question in this regard is who is going to pay for that? And planning the project, planning the decarbonization pathway, one should thoroughly assess the market demand, the customer willingness to pay for greener products, as well as funding availability and the investors' willingness to risk. All this economic and technological uncertainty brings, leads to the complex project structure. Куда-нибудь сбоку. My apologies, it's a rocking day today. I was pretty sure it's off. Sorry. The project funding, which is still an issue, requires involvement of a consortium of project partners and a pool of funding organizations. And at the project execution stage, one should be really ready for the flexible project approach, as different project phases may require different pool of partners and different pool of funding organizations. The competition on project funding is really very, very fierce. And when applying for the project funding, your project is going to be filtered by the funding organization through a sophisticated scoring system. And each point at this scoring will weight differently, of course, depending on project specifics and a specific focus of the funding organization. But here on the screen, you see a selection of key criteria applied by funding organizations when assessing the project and when making the decision to finance it. Among the key criteria, based on our and our clients' experience, we would name project maturity, which includes business model, financial and legal structure, and project schedule. And in the majority of cases, you will be asked for the completed feasibility study, either run by the reputable institution, reputable firm, or at least verified by a reputable firm. Of course, compliance with international regulations and policies is one of the important points, as well as investment sustainability score, which is quite often required to be proved by the third party. Degree of innovation and technology readiness level is also in focus. And among the key things you need to prove is your confidence to leverage the full funding required for the project. In other words, every funding organization making the decision to provide you with the requested 40, 50, 60, or however percent of funding needs to be sure that you can secure the rest of funding and make your project happen. In the majority of cases, we observe you can be also asked for the positive financial audit run by a reputable firm like someone from Big Four, for example, and a lot of funding organizations are focused also on project scalability. Looking specifically at selected economic indicators usually asked by the financial institutions, you can see some normally applied, like the project NPV and payback period, but at the same time, you can be asked for the NPV as well as CO2 avoidance assessment and abatement cost, not only for your core technology, but also for the alternative technologies, both low carbon and carbon intensive. In other words, the funding institutions quite often want to see that the decarbonization way chosen for you is the best one fitting the industrial needs. All these should be kept in mind when applying for funding. As I said, the competition is fierce, and but still it is doable when properly prepared. Talking about the overall business case development and making your project happen, really a lot of points, a lot of different aspects should be taken into account and should be considered. The selection of points you see here on the screen is not unique. I mean, none of those points is unique or unknown. They all are well known, and the art is to keep them all together when managing your project. Because the investment planning today is going under the market uncertainty and lack of habitual benchmarking of best practices, which means that quite often you will need to involve experienced partners able to provide you with the market intelligence and with the proper economic modeling. The investment scenario, given the complexity of the project and given the consortium of partners needed to make the project happen, the investment scenario is to account complex requirements of different partners and different financial institutions, which is quite challenging as well. Technology concept is to account not only core technology, but also related technologies and infrastructure needs, which sounds obvious, of course, but quite often we see those missing points in the business models of our clients and partners.
Oksana, please, 2-3 minutes.
Yes, this is the last slide, actually.
Thank you, Oksana.
Yes. In regard of the project funding, the key recommendation is to monitor funding programs and calls on a regular basis, since they all are open for limited amount of time, which means that your project model needs to be ready in advance. And of course, in regard of project funding, we strongly recommend to apply financial engineering to secure the full coverage of the project financing, as it was already discussed. At the project execution stage, among from obvious things such as ensuring readiness and accessibility of the infrastructure, provision of permitting, and the rest of things, we strongly recommend to thoroughly develop your procurement strategy to account sufficient timing for equipment manufacturing and delivery. Just to give a short example from our experience, electrolyzer equipment, if ordered and contracted today, can take up to 2 years to be manufactured and delivered. And in this case, of course, you could opt for a wait-and-see approach, waiting while the equipment is getting cheaper, which is the obvious trend in the market today. But at the same time, you are at risk of finding yourself in a long queue waiting for the equipment to be delivered. So this is also should be taken into account. One more factor, the last but not the least, is the project management to account cognitive aspects of multicultural undertaking of your decarbonization project. This factor is quite often underestimated, but still today this decarbonization project is an international endeavor, and you can easily imagine, for example, Poland as a project host, Indians as the owner of industrial facilities, Germans or Austrians as technology provider, and for example, British as project management team.
Or Italian who making from CO2 Coca-Cola.
Yeah, exactly. Which means that you should account sufficient time to align cognitive maps, understanding of project schemes, and aligning and bridging different business practices and approaches. The key suggestion from our side is that a flexible approach is the king, readiness to continuous adjustment is the king. To make your decarbonization happen, you have to start pilots as soon as possible, negotiate partnerships as soon as possible, and consider sector coupling, which was already mentioned by Alessandro today, to enjoy the synergies of sector coupling, securing funding, and proper execution of the project. That is all from my side, unfortunately. I could talk for a long, but I need to stop. And you're welcome with your questions during the coffee break or afterwards.
Okay, thank you.
For attention.
Amazing speech.